Shalom, the King is coming. Glory to the King. Hey, check this out. We're going to talk a little bit about saddling up with the beast and the hidden status of the 14th Amendment for the first hour here tonight. Then we'll get immediately to your phone calls. We're going to talk about contracting with the beast. If we didn't put this information out in front of you, you would never, ever, ever even know. And I'm sure that some of you have no idea when you're contracted with the beast. You don't have any idea what's going on, far as when your name is in all caps, when you sign documents and everything. We've got an expert on this who's not only talking this talk, but he actually has walked the walk. That's what he has done. We're going to go to Texas here, to Brother Brian down in Texas. Brother Brian, are you on?
Yes, sir, I am.
Oh, hallelujah. All right, brothers and sisters, this is Brother Brian down in Texas. Brother Brian, we appreciate you being here on the Straitway Truth Radio broadcast with us tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Love you all.
Brother Brian, we need to be informed because you know just as well as I do, we have been duped. We have made contracts and agreements and saddled up with not only this government, which they try to actually act like that they are our protectors and they are really for us, but really what they're doing is stripping sovereignty away from us. Brother, could you speak to us a little bit about the hidden status of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America?
Yes, sir, I can. And once again, it's an honor, Pastor Dowell, to be on with you and for you to take the time. I really greatly appreciate it. I know a lot of the brothers that I've already had conversations with are really deeply excited and hungry for truth because, as we all know, we all come from different walks of life. We have different understandings, different levels of speed that we grasp concepts, etc. But if we first start and take everything back to one simple thing, His Word, and Exodus 23:32, commandment to make no covenant with them. And if you look up the definition of covenant, 1285, it lays it out right there. But what has happened, and without our informed consent, because we have been taught a Roman version of Latin, most specifically in the legal or lawful sense called dog Latin. It's a dead language in all caps. So whenever you see your name, we didn't know this. I didn't know this. I didn't consent to this when I was born, when I came out of my mother, and neither did anybody else. But what has taken place, folks, and brothers and sisters, is we have been born into bondage in one form or another. We all know this. We've all come to this truth. The children of the Most High and Yehuda were brought here by the transatlantic slave trade, and the 14th Amendment was put in place by the Jewish slave owners and the Jewish bankers, the Rothschild cartels that go by various names, nation states, names of countries, corporations, etc. And they pulled probably the biggest deception that's taken place throughout history. It's enslaved not only the children of the Most High by specific bloodline. Once the awakening became so much so that slavery would no longer be accepted, they then tricked everybody and put us all into a new secondary class of status. And the 14th Amendment is exactly that. It's a trick. It's a con job. It's a specific amendment that was added to not the original organic Constitution, which I'll get into here in a little bit later with the timeline, but there were two additional corporate, make sure I emphasize that, corporate constitutions that were put in place when this country, a republic of sovereign states, went bankrupt because they were controlled by the British, Israelite, Rothschild, Khazar families and the banking cartels that Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 warns about. But specifically, and Pastor Dowell, please jump in at any point because I tend to ramble, but it's like anything. I know why the Most High brought me here, as I mentioned to you when we initially met, not only to be redeemed and to join Israel, but I know that he put this in front of me years ago, and I left everything. I walked away from everything. And at the time, my wife definitely thought I was crazy, but, you know, all things will be made known in the last days, which is exactly what's taking place to a great degree here. But so let's chat about the 14th Amendment.
So, Brother Brian, let me break in here for a second.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yep.
what you're saying is that when they had chattel slavery many years ago, especially with the Negroes here, and basically what they've done with their new laws is that they've actually put everybody on the plantation now. It's not just the Negroes; it's literally everybody in America is actually on the plantation. Is that correct?
Correct. And if you read the last sentence of the 14th Amendment, it will reveal exactly what the beast is up to, because it states specifically that the traders, right, the merchants of the world, right, Revelation warns about these merchants. The merchants would trade in mercantile and goods and the souls of men, right, meaning bondage, slavery. But you're exactly right, Pastor Dowell. They ended the plantation system specifically, and they took it underground and corporatized it, and created a new class status, a secondary status called the U.S. citizen, U.S. citizen. So prior to that, there was a prior status, and I'm not giving credence in any way to the Luciferian Freemasons that formed this country, right? All nations are heathen nations except one, Israel. Hallelujah. But specifically, there was a prior status, and that's what the gist of this information coming forth is about, is there can't be unequal laws per their own statutes and codes, but yet they've hidden it. They've Mithraismed it. They've hidden it, cloaked it in basically Latin, in a form of dog Latin or dead language.
All right. I tell you, brother. So, does this have something to do with, and then, you know, after I ask this question, you can go ahead and answer and continue to move on. But does this have something to do with how they classify us as wage earners as well? Correct. All those terms. Now remember, we got to go back to how we were scripturally defined as one simple word. One spoken word by the Most High, man and woman, man and woman. So anytime we take on a new definition, whether it be person, resident, individual, human being, driver, traveling, all these terms are basically corporate words that you and I think in the English language, we think it means one thing, but actually in hidden dog Latin, it means something totally different. So it's a hidden tongue that these Luciferians have put upon us, and yet we don't know how to decipher it. And if I could go to one thing, right, and I've mentioned this so many times in Hosea 4:6, right, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. But if you look up that definition, destroyed, it means to cease, cause to cease, actually a primitive root to be dumb or silent. So we're not dumb. They've just declared us dumb through their basically Roman admiralty law. And we don't have, right, they've hidden it, and we don't, one, we've been asleep at the wheel. But all these things are revealed. It's not only me. This is not about Brian. It has nothing to do with me. There's other brothers in this ministry that have already completely come to, take this on. Specifically, 3 or 4 gentlemen, Travis here in Texas, Chase, Ethan, and if I forget anybody, Kyle, for example, that are just diligently looking into this, because we know, hands down, I not only know from what was put in forward me, but I also have gone into their star court system
and challenge them and put them in their place, because once you do that and you know basically what the truth is, they're going to deny it, they're going to lie, they're going to mock you, right? The three stages of truth are very simple. One, it's to mock you, then it's to become violently abrasive, then the facts will then prove that truth, and it proves itself every single time. So if I could continue there, let's continue on the 14th Amendment, because this conceptually is extremely important to understand of why are we in the predicament that we're in today, because all of us were born, for the most part, a large percentage were born in hospitals. Our parents took us in and they signed documents, they signed paperwork that we, as the living soul, the living man and woman, right, me sitting here today, I had no idea. I was not informed of any of that information, nor did I consent to it. Mm-hmm. So through contract law is how this whole system works. It's really what we're dealing with, folks, here is some of us know this and others don't, but we're nothing more than a colony of the Roman Empire, period.
You know, Brother Brian, if you listen to me, and it's obvious, but I have been beating that drum for many years and try to keep telling people over and over again that nothing has changed. It's just that they have used these deceptive words and practices, contracts, agreement, unlawful contracts and agreements. And that's the reason why when we end up going into that little kangaroo court system, we don't know where we're coming or going, because they're speaking a language, what you call a dog language, that between the judges and the lawyers, they understand exactly what they're talking about. And these people willfully take on this system because it provides for them a good little system for them to make money while they're serving Caesar.
Yes, sir.
They're basically extorting.
Yes, sir. That's the truth. Extortion, you can name it a bunch of different terms, but what it really is just outright fraud. It's outright fraud, which is a violation of the Most High's law. So, and it's theft, right? It's fraud by theft and coercion, extortion, all these things. And Pastor Dowell, you mentioned a couple things, and I'll just add on to it because you're spot on. I've heard you speak of it, but when they here's the trick here, folks. They've got us into contracting with the beast, which we're not supposed to do, but we did it without our informed consent. So really, it's just a matter of now educating ourselves with direction of the Most High Yah, which Pastor Dowell has now so gratefully started to put out. But these attorneys that everybody thinks when you get in trouble or you have some issue with this corporation, because that's all they are, folks. There's no such thing as a government. And I'll add this, and I'm gonna check in here with some just historical stuff that is very important. So let's see, our country, what we all think of the United States of America, actually went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it went completely bankrupt around 1913 after the Rothschilds and these basically 7 or 8 Khazar, Edomite, mongrel mixture of Cain and Esau, the banking cartel that runs and controls everything. They had put our country and hoard us out just like they've done everybody else throughout history through debt. They created World War I, and through that they created the Balfour Declaration, which is how they created this fake state of Israel right now. But to hit on that specifically, they bankrupted the country, and they did it by design, and then they dissolved the country. So there is no such thing as what you and I think of the United States. All right, there was a sovereign state, a republic of individual states, sovereign states that were ruled and had jurisdiction by the people. They bankrupted it just like they've done everybody today. Look at Greece, look at everywhere, all over the planet. They get you in, they whore you out to accept the debt, their fake money, and then when they inflate the money to the point that you can't pay it, then they basically bring in the knee crackers and they take what is rightfully theirs because you contracted with them. So my point is, there's no such thing as what we think of our country. It's nothing more than a corporation and a parent corporation of all these sub-entities, which we call, I live in the state of Texas. Pastor Dowell, you live in the state of Tennessee, right? We all live in these states. But we don't realize that there is no such thing as a state. They're literally corporations, and they all follow this ancient Latin code called the Universal Commercial Code, which is a corporation based in Rome in a building inside those whatever 80-foot tall walls that spits out this code that all these companies have to basically abide by. So if I get back to the 14th Amendment, what it technically did was there were roughly 3.5 to 4 million black slaves. And, I don't even like to use that term. They were basically the children of Yehuda, right? They were the children of the Most High that were brought here through bondage.
Now, Brother Brian,
and they were...
a lot of people may not comprehend and understand what you're saying, because we have a lot of brand new people here. So when you use Hebrew terms, also use the English vernacular so that they'll comprehend what you're saying, because most people, I don't know if they can detect it or not in your voice, but you are an Israelite, but you are also what the world will call a white man. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. By blood, I'm most likely, from what I've studied, a descendant of Japheth, as of most of white skin-colored people are. Maybe wrong, doesn't matter to me. But yes, I believe in my heart I'm a Hebrew Israelite, because I've returned and been immersed in living water and
crossed over. So you yes, comprehend and understand that the hidden ones or the people with melanated skin are actually the people of a lost tribe of Israel that has been taken captives according to what the scriptures have said.
Unequivocally. And I've done a bunch of radio shows. You can find that, as I've mentioned in prior conversations. But that's, Pastor Dowell, that's what brought me to you specifically. Was I knew who these fake Khazar Jews were, and I broke down one simple thing. I went to find out the lineage of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And that simple study brought me to you, and realizing, hey, everything I've been taught is a lie, and boom, the light bulb came on, and it was obvious. But yes, I agree with you. The descendants of Shem and Ham were of dark skin, and they blended in with each other. That's why nobody could tell them apart, and that's why baby Yahusha was hidden in ancient Kemet, which was the land of the black lands.
All right, my brother, go ahead and continue on.
Okay, so back to the 14th Amendment, what took place was this corporation had gone bankrupt. They had been used by the Jewish banking cartels, and they had used us as a military incursion in the First World War. From that became the Balfour Declaration, as I mentioned. But at the end of the Civil War, there were roughly 3.5 black Negro peoples that literally they didn't know what to do with. So they created this thing through the 14th Amendment and created a new status called the U.S. citizen, and they took everybody, white, black, Asian, you name it, anybody, any different nationality, and they put us all into one, basically a new status under the federal corporation as an employee, not sovereigns, not free-willed people. We have no rights. We only have civil rights, which are statutes, codes that can be regulated, taxed, taken away from you, threatened you. You can be extorted, because we have consented to call ourselves, one, a U.S. citizen, and two, a resident. And those are specific terms. Anybody listening, don't believe a word I say. Go search in the Black's Law dictionaries in the edition 1 through 7, roughly. You can find the original definition of resident. A resident means that you basically receive a benefit, therefore you owe a duty. So when you say, when you go into court and they say, yeah, you're that person, right? Or you're that resident, but you're a person, right? Well, yeah, I'm a person. Of course I'm a person. Well, you just give consent because you just verbally from your tongue stated that you were a dead corporation. And all corporations are owned by Rome. They're all owned under admiralty law. Rome is the beast. Rome didn't go anywhere. They just minimized. They renamed all the European countries into different names to hide it. But they all speak the same dog Latin, this hidden, basically Latin code that's regulated by the UCC statutes and laws. So to specifically talk of the 14th Amendment, like I mentioned, that's the trick right there, folks. So when we were born, now let's move into this thing called the birth certificate, because the 14th Amendment started and created a new status called the U.S. citizen, and everybody's a U.S. citizen. But yet, if you look on the passport application and the DS-11 form, this is how I was woken up by a gentleman that taught me most of this. If you read these forms, specifically the DS-11, the U.S. State Department has ultimate authority and jurisdiction over one's status. So if we go back in ancient common law under Vattel's Law of Nations, which was roughly in the early 1600s through the mid 1700s, that's where the common law and basic rights and how all these nations would govern themselves came out of. Well, if I'm a free man, it is my right to basically be able to tell what I am from a political self-determination, right? If I say I'm not a slave, then I'm not a slave. But if a government or a corporation tells me I'm a resident, a citizen, or a slave, then that's tyranny, right? It's as simple as that. So what they did through the 14th Amendment, they put us in a new secondary status, but yet they hid the original hidden, basically non-citizen national. And the non-citizen national is the sovereign. It's the original status of the not only the free men, but also these Luciferian Freemasons that put this thing into place and hid it. So what they did, in roughly like the 1930s, I think, is when it really first started. 1940s is when it really took steam, was the birth certificate. So when I was born, as well as most everybody listening, there was a document created called the birth certificate, right? So to speak in general terms, just from the top of that, a certificate does not mean you own something. Like your car, you have a car and you think you have the title, right? The certificate of title. Well, the certificate only means that you're literally the tenant. You're renting it, but the real true chain of title is owned by somebody else. Well, they created the hospitals who are paid a commission, and I've gone undercover to try to recover all the documents for my two beautiful young girls that are Hebrew Israelites. And they pulled every trick in the trade. They tried to deny me. I went in time after time, up to about 4 times in person, tagging along my little girls, to try to make it look like I was not threatening, etc. And they finally released all the documents and showed me exactly how they pulled the scam. Well, when we're born, when we come out of our mother's womb, they create this basically a birth certificate, which is a bond. It's a bank instrument, a financial instrument that is a bond instrument. And if you look on it, as well as your Social Security card, your driver's license, all your mail, everything that you get that you contract with this B system is all in capital letters. And that is the dog Latin. That's the hidden language of basically an avatar, a fictitious dead corporation. That the state, when you were born, they create a bond, a financial instrument called the birth certificate. I was born on and I'm looking at my birth certificate right now. I was born on a specific day, at a specific time, and an hour, right? But yet my birth certificate is registered literally a week later. And that's when this financial document is registered with the corporation. So to register, there's another definition to look up. means to, once you register something, you assign ownership to somebody else. You no longer own it.
Brother Brian.
So when you register your car, yes, sir.
So we're going to pick up exactly where you are at right now. I just want to ask a few questions right here, or at least make a couple of statements to hopefully to put a defibrillator
Yes, sir.
on the people's minds right here. So this birth certificate.
Yes, sir.
This birth certificate, to me, from what I know, and my knowledge is limited compared to yours in this particular area of expertise, which I greatly appreciate you being here tonight. So
Yes, sir.
We believe and we think, and some of us, I'm just going to say the informed people, because everybody's not informed. For some reason, people love this utopia of ignorance and this deep stupor that everybody seems to be in. People love that stuff for some reason. But are we not all born under what they call admiralty law?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We're born into bondage. It's no different than the ancient Israelites that were held in ancient Kemet under bondage. We're just in a different territory, but we're still governed by the same Luciferian satanic system. But yes, we are born into Roman admiralty law, basically the law of the sea. That's why it's called, when we're birthed, like you're coming, like a boat is birthed into a port.
Right.
There's all these hidden words that are basically hidden. We just don't know how to decipher them. But to answer your question specifically, yes, we're born into Roman admiralty law.
And I appreciate you actually answering that right there, because you know just as well as I do, and I will definitely concede the point that I am nowhere near as versed in this area as you are, and I'm definitely anxious in learning. But from my own individual studies, from doing my own individual due diligence, I'm sure you have heard my cadence and you have heard my speech over the years, hear me saying certain things, directing people certain ways. And because this admiralty law, it all has something to do with exactly when you go into that court system as well. I mean, after all, when you a ship pulls into a dock, and what do you have? You have a docket when you go up to the courthouse. There's a docket that is actually being called, and there's a manifest. And I'm not going to continue to keep going on and stuff. It's just that I did not receive a lot of this information that I have received in the limited areas that I received it until after I got out of the military. I didn't realize when I was in the military that I was actually there not for America, but for the corporation of the United States of America, doing the bidding of the powers that be as part of the hitman and hit squads, creating terror all across the United States of America. What saith you? And then go ahead and get right back on the birth certificate.
Well spoken, Pastor Dowell, and you're my shepherd, and I'm learning so much from you just in a short amount of time. And my only hope is that if I can present any of this, to put some knowledge in our brothers and sisters, that's all I seek here. But you had a good point. I'll go further deeper into the birth certificate. What it is, it's in ancient Rome, and actually Justinian was a Roman emperor. And when the common law after the Messiah was murdered and people were waking up everywhere, and this talk of freedom and rights started to grow like wildfire, Justinian put in a thing called the Corpus Juris, and that's when they instituted this specific Roman canonized law to create this all caps name so that they could create it and extend the contract of slavery that Rome had for so long. And what the contract is, the birth certificate is basically, it's a bond, it's a warehouse receipt, a banknote that's created by a corporation without your consent. It's then stored and housed in another corporation, meaning the state that you live in their Department of Health and Records, etc. Some may call it something different. It doesn't really matter, but it's a monetized piece of it's a financial instrument that created this all caps fictitious corporation, and you think it's you, but it's really not you. But we consent to it every time we sign and agree to contract and to give it life. Think about it that way. We give it life by our acceptance. And that's a hard concept to get, because it literally entails almost everything we touch. But it's an all caps juristic dog Latin legal fiction corporate deal that's registered and housed in this federal corporation. Now the trick is, if you look at your birth certificate, you can pull yours out, or your kids, and here's your name in all caps. And some may be different because there's some time and different tricks that they've implemented. But my parents' name are all in lowercase names. The doctor's name is in lowercase names, etc. But yet at the bottom, it's got these different dates that are registration dates. And this thing is literally created, it's housed, and then it's monetized. But the trick here is, folks, brothers and sisters, they've created us as bastard children. And Pastor Dowell, you speak of this so well when you say mamzer. Well, that's the trick that these Khazars have pulled on us. They've tried to title us as bastard children, therefore we're wards of the state. Like that's why on your birth certificate, your mother's name is not your name; it's her original name. But when my wife took my name and we were married, she's no longer carrying that old name. But yeah, on the birth certificate, they still go off the mother's maiden name, which technically then makes you a bastard child. And the trick here is this is called the Sesquivi Trust. So this is how Rome has enslaved us. They created a trust, a bond, basically a bank account with all these entities, meaning me, you, all these dead entity, corporate, fictitious names. And when the country went bankrupt in 1913 and 1933, if you look at those numbers, there's a big clue, 33, a Freemasonry number. They bankrupted the country, and then they created two new constitutions that were corporate constitutions, and they changed the word of person, created a little variation of the United States, etc. And in law, any change of a document changes the entire meaning of it, especially when it's changing into a dog Latin. But my point here is, and to try to simplify this, because I know a lot of people are just listening, and this is probably, I hope it's making some sense, but over time, that's how this thing's going to become to be revealed. But there's a thing called the Sesquivi Trust, and it was created in Rome. It was a Roman edict, an act in, you're going to, Pastor Dowell, you're not going to believe this, but it was in the year 1666. The last three numbers are the name of the beast.
Oh, yeah.
That's the year that, you can't make this stuff up. That's the year that they created this act, and they've put all of us as bonds in a trust, and then they hypothecated us as debt for this dead, corrupt corporation called the United States. And that's how Brian, they run up the debt. Yes, sir.
You've been hearing me lately in the past few Shabbats, as well as a few months ago. You remember I did a message on trades, and I was speaking about the spiritual side of trades and stuff. But you've heard me recant and say it, not recant, but say it over and over and over again, excuse me. Strike that statement right there. But you've heard me say this over and over again, how that this system right here is busy making merchandise of men.
Yes, sir. If you'll read the last sentence of the 14th Amendment, it states very clearly just what you stated, Pastor Dowell, that the merchants of the world, etc., would trade in the products, mercantile, and the souls of men. Right there in the amendment, they're telling you right there that they're actually really trading us as slaves. Absolutely.
Yes, sir, Brother Brian.
You can't make this stuff up.
Do not go anywhere. Stay right there, my friend, my brother. We're going to give a ministry break here for a second, and don't forget your thought, and we'll be right back here right after this ministry break.
Yes,
Shalom, this is Sister Wenda. I hope that all of you are enjoying the broadcast that you're listening to right now. We appreciate each and every last one of you, our faithful listeners and supporters of the Straitway Truth radio broadcast. We try to make sure that we do our due diligence and do our best to ensure that you have the best broadcast as well as the truth coming to you in the hour that we're living in right now. If you would like to help us in this endeavor, your offering will be greatly appreciated in the work of the ministry of the Most High Yah. Our mailing address for your gift, offering, or letter of support is Charles Dowell Jr. That's Charles Dowell Jr. And Dowell is spelled D-O-W-E-L-L. 506 Ellington Drive. Ellington is spelled E-L-L-I-N-G-T-O-N. P.O. Box 32, Lafayette, Tennessee. And Lafayette is spelled L-A-F-A-Y-E-T-T-E 37083. Again, our mailing address is Charles Dowell Jr., 506 Ellington Drive, P.O. Box 32, Lafayette, Tennessee, 37083. If you would like to contact us by way of phone, the country code is 1, area code 615-688-3025. That's 1-615-688-3025. You may leave a message there, and, be the Father's will, we will do whatever we can to try to return your message. It is our hope and our prayer that as you continue to listen to the Straitway Truth Ministry, and as you apply the teachings of this ministry, that you are finding peace and growth within you, your family, and life as well. Please tell others so that the truth may also have an impact and touch others' lives, so that they may enjoy the benefits of the truth of Jesus Christ, just like we all are. Shalom, the King is coming.
Shalom, shalom, the King is coming. And again, how deep does the proverbial rabbit hole go? Now, I realize that a lot of the information that Brother Brian is bringing forth here tonight, that most people don't even have a clue to what in the world is actually taking place and happening, because after all, if they can't even embrace the truth of the Bible, of keeping the commandments, the law, statutes, and commandments, how in the hell are they going to be able to hear a man that's actually telling you what is happening to you right in front of your very eyes? I mean, the wool or the proverbial rug has literally been ripped right from under our feet and stuff. So I understand. I mean, I am a man of truth, and I have been through hell and high water in judgment of people, of ignorant men. And I have went against wind and tide, especially against the religious wind and tide of this world, to expose the lies of this satanic system called Christianity, as well as everything else that is going on that has to do with our soul. And it seems like people are just simply not interested in the deliverance of their soul. So if you can't hear me speaking spiritually on things and issues and stuff like this, maybe you can hear Brother Brian, who is definitely well informed and articulate. Maybe you can hear him. And if you can't hear him, then guess what? Yah, the Most High, just simply ain't dealing with you. You're not ordained to eternal life. You might as well go out and fill up your cup. Do whatever the hell you want. Be dumb, be stupid, be ignorant. Go get drunk. Go get high. And just throw yourself off the nearest bridge and stuff, because after all, why delay the inevitable when you can inform yourself and you can chart your course and be informed? And not only that, you can actually know how to live and navigate in this life, and then keep the Gestapo off of you. And then when it's all said and done, because you know just as well as I do, there's a great war coming. There's a great war coming. We all know it. We can see the proverbial writing on the wall. But right now, we have a spiritual war that's going on. And we need to get ourselves informed. There's too many people, too many of you that are dumb on purpose. You are willfully ignorant, just like what the book says. So, how deep does a proverbial rabbit hole goes? Brother Brian, we give you back the floor again, my brother. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead and continue on with your information, brother. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Well spoken, Pastor Dowell. If I could add to that, we're for we did not love the truth, he sends us a strong delusion, and that was one of the scriptures that actually physically and vocally woke me up, because I didn't understand it at first. I just couldn't conceptually grasp it until I realized that what I thought I believed was a lie, and until I woke up and shunned all that he would continually send me this strong delusion. Well, this is just part of it. I'm not saying it's all of it. This is just one of those things, and it reminds me of this, when, let's see, in, this will put some resonance in it, but let's see, in Luke 12:12, or basically 12:8 through 12:12, and he's talking about when we're sold out by our brothers and sisters and parents, etc., and we're dragged into these synagogues and magistrates and powers, right? That the Most High is going to give us basically speech. Well, I'm not saying in any way that this takes away from that, but if we don't know what the trick is, we don't know what the little traps are, and every time they pull us into their basically fictitious dead court, a star chamber, basically, we walk in there like we're deaf, dumb, and mute, and that's exactly what it said. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We're made to be quiet and dumb. Well, that's got to end, and those that have ears to hear are gonna, this is gonna resonate, and the rest, that's Yah's will to see what He does. But
Brother Brian, may I interject something here for a second before you continue on?
Yes, sir.
Lucas, or the book of Luke, chapter 7, and I'm going to read verse 29, and I'm going to stop at verse 35 for a second. And all the people that heard him and the publicans justified Yah, being baptized with the baptism of John. But the Pharisees and the lawyers rejected the counsel of Yah against them. I'll read that verse again. But the Pharisees and the lawyers rejected the counsel of Yah against them, being not baptized of him. And the master said, Yahshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ said, whereunto then shall I liken the men of this generation? And to what are they like? They are like unto children sitting in the marketplace, and calling one to another, and saying, we have piped unto you, and you have not danced, and we have mourned to you, and you have not wept. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, yet you say he have a devil. The Son of Man is come eating and drinking, and you say, behold, a gluttonous man, and a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of her children. Go ahead, Brother Brian.
Man, well, that resonates. This is such a pleasure, Pastor Dowell. As I mentioned earlier, there's a number of brothers that I've already got to have some really good conversations with, and Travis being one down here in Texas. He's a like-minded brother. He's put his neck on the line, to put it pretty blunt, but just sent me a great little definition. I'll read it here as we're talking about these words, because remember, brothers and sisters, all these words have meanings, and just because we think it means something does not mean it's a fact, and that's where this knowledge is going to slowly start to seep forth, because we're not speaking the Kodesh tongue that the Most High is going to give us when He returns. We're speaking a Roman tongue called Latin, basically a perversion of it. So keep that in mind in all things. But let me read it real quick. This is on the birth certificate. Quote, a settlement certificate, also known as a birth certificate since 1837, is an official document issued to validly recorded poor, quote, paupers, granting them certain basic rights and entitlement to benefits in exchange for recognition of their status as being owned as quote, property and lawful slaves, also known as indentured. You can't make this up.
Yeah.
And then even better, natural child, the ordinary euphemism for bastard or illegitimate. Right? So when they say, yeah, you were born natural, you were born a natural birth, you're like, yes, I was. It's these little tricks that are, that just kind of play out, but hopefully through this process and Yahweh willing, we can begin to build a basic knowledge of the trap that's been put over us. And then what is the remedy? How do we come out of this? How do we remedy this? And when I met you, Pastor Dowell, I said one thing, and I'll never forget it. It's not only are we awakening, and you're the shepherd. You've been ordained by the Most High. I have no doubt. I've physically seen it at Sukkot. I've felt it. I've heard it. And not only is it a twofold process. It's not only are we coming out of it led by your leadership, but also how do we come out of this contractual thing with the beast? Because we can't ride the fence, right? You can't have it both ways. We can't have it one way, but yet we're still contractually agreeing and giving life to this, basically the whore that rides on the beast. And it's just there to eat us up. It's there to consume us. It's there to take everything from us in fines, fees, fear, time, right? Time is such a valuable thing. If we could just have back half the time they've stolen from us, just imagine that. But anyways, I'm probably rambling there, so let me get back to a couple dates I thought were really important. And Pastor Dowell, I don't want to, obviously hopefully we can do this in a few sessions, because I know it's a lot to chew for anybody that's just hearing it. But through this process and with your leadership, hopefully we can put it out in a teaching mechanism. And there's some other ideas. Definitely got some other good ideas on how to present it. But
well, Brother Brian, of course, that I'm going to be. And for those of you that are out there, I'm going to be in Houston, Texas next week. Myself and Elder Mitchell and Brother Kabir, the head up at Straitway Praiseland, we're going to be in Houston, Texas, visiting with the saints of the Most High Yah next week. So Blog Talk Radio won't be going on, but the next following week, we will pick up right where we left off. And we'll continually keep doing this consecutively for a while until I feel like that, at least in this area right here, we've somewhat brought forth the truth and some understanding. I would recommend that once the show is over with, once the broadcast is over with, that you would actually go into the archives, because you can actually download every single broadcast that's been broadcast here on Blog Talk Radio, and in an MP3 form, and you can keep it later on for your listening pleasure in case too much information is being given out right now, because it's simply a lot to digest. I mean, after all, when you're a truther and you're telling this truth and stuff, you start throwing truth at an uneducated, unsuspecting mind people and stuff, man. It's like they start seeing stars or something, and if they can't see stars, then they just go run back into their hole, because it's more safer taking the blue pill than it is to take the red pill. But I'd say, just like Brother Brian, and I'm sure you're second emotion, all we offer you is the truth. Go ahead, Brother Brian.
I second that with conviction. So, and that's a good point, Pastor Dowell. And my advice is this, and I think I mentioned this to you initially, but at the start of the show, we all come from different walks of life. We all have different understandings, different abilities to grasp concepts, different abilities to listen and hear. But thank goodness and praise the Most High Yah for this platform and to be able to record it, so that when you do have questions, you can go back and listen, start, stop. And then, like I said, don't believe a word I say. Go seek out these things. Start looking up these definitions. And as we can move forward, Pastor Dell, like I said, there's some other educational things we can start to put this into Google Docs and other things where brothers and sisters can actually start to go touch and feel the documents and the information, and then prove all things. Like I said, prove all things. You'll have the time. You do it in your own house, and the Most High is going to reveal this. So I wanted to hit on something which was pretty interesting. And So after hearing like this first initial conversation of this, the average brother or sister is going, "Oh my goodness, what in the world has taken place?" Okay, I get it. Now, what do we do? What do we do from here? What's the next step? And that's in all this fake patriot BS that's out there in this, this heathen nation we live in, and people are talking about make America great, take our country back. Sorry, you can have it. I want Israel. I want our people to become empowered to understand that when we're pulled into those synagogues and those courts, that we understand what the game is, that we understand what the trap is, so that we can be armored. We can have the armor of Yah, and we can understand exactly what their method is. Because unless we do, it'll be like the dragon just eating you alive, because you just don't understand what's about to take place. And it's really simple. It's almost like it's a wicked little fraternity of Luciferians, but once you figure out their game, as a few of us have, it's nonsense. But I wanted to hit on one point, Pastor Dowell, and then I think maybe it might be a good point to just open it up and digest, let people digest this. But the remedy here, folks, is very simple. It's there's a hidden status at this federal corporation, this beast corporation that's owned by the IMF. It's owned by the Khazars, International Monetary Fund. It was bankrupted. They own it. A private cartel of bond owners own what you think is America. Okay, it's a corporation. It's nothing more. Well, there's a hidden status called the American or the national, the non-citizen. So I don't claim citizen. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm not a resident. And I've already challenged the federal corporation at the highest level, and they've agreed, which they're never going to disagree with you, because they're not going to let the rabbit out of the proverbial hat, per se, because it's wildfire. They understand that their days are numbered, and they can, as long as they can project this thing, as long as they can, to take as much as they can to get to the next whatever it is. I really don't care. But if you look at the passport status and the passport application, and that's what woke me up through the gentleman that taught me a lot of this, was the DS-11 form in bold print at the very top. It has a legal warning, and I say that legal because that's corporate talk. Well, it warns you that you can be held accountable and get in trouble if you submit additional information. Well, what is additional information? Because if you're taking out a passport, right? Pastor Dowell, there's another word, passport. Like we're entering ports, and that's how they sold slaves, by passports. You entered one port, you left one nation, and you entered another port. You had a passport, and the passport was the document with all the slave names on it, right? It's unbelievable. But on the passport application, it specifically lays out additional information. Well, what is that additional information? Well, it's called an affidavit. And in common law and in Mosaic law, the truth, unrebutted, is the highest form of evidence. So an affidavit is a simple document that is created, and it's basically where you lay out under penalty of perjury, signed by witnesses, right? And there's a specific technique to sign and all that. We'll get into that, all those details later, but an affidavit that's put on file with the federal corporation that specifically says what you are not, because until you do that, they have the right to claim what you are. And until you, and this goes back to the Sesquivi Trust Act, where they declared us all dead entities and lost at sea, right? Lost at sea in Roman Admiralty, sea of the law. We're just floating out there from our birth. We're floating at sea, and the state gathers us like a bunch of buoys and says these are ours, until these dumb idiots basically wake up and say, wait a minute, and you raise your hand up and you say, wait a minute, I'm alive, I'm not dead, I'm me, I'm not this, and you reclaim who you really are, and you have the power to do that. They just have hidden the mechanism to do that. But the affidavit is the highest form of evidence, and anytime an agent or a corporate whores, what I will call them, these agents of Satan that operate these government entities, when you submit an affidavit and put them under the scope and the light, they have to then abide by their strict UCC laws. They cannot deviate, otherwise they're in real deep trouble, because they become personally liable. And this is where the Most High Yahs are actually guiding it behind the scenes, because the adversary was given dominion, he was given rule to create this system, but yet he still has to abide by certain rules. And I know that might sound odd, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. Even the beast has to abide to a certain degree with Yah's rules. But the affidavit is the one document that says, I am not this, I am this, this, and this. And until you firmly declare what you're not, they have the right to assume and call you whatever they want, meaning serf, slave, resident, citizen, whatever, indentured pauper. I mean, I just read that definition. But that's about it, Pastor Dowell. I think I'll cede at the moment. I've thrown out a lot of information, and I think that'd probably be a good starting point to kind of digest, and hopefully, Yah willing, we can learn from this point.
Man, I tell you what, Brother Brian, that's a mouthful, a stomach full, an ear full, and it is a lot, man. It really is. And it's kind of like almost a scripture. Sir. Unless you actually do your own due diligence and you immerse yourself in it, it's going to go right over your head. It's like you're almost speaking in French or something like that, because you've really truly got to make an attempt to really truly care about what's happening. Because you know just as well as I do, our children that are born here on this land, none of them have birth certificates. We just don't do that. You understand what I mean? But
hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Because I may not understand and comprehend a lot of things, but I'm such a student of truth that a lot of things that I never did come across secularly by doing any study, by looking into the sources that are available to us, it became crystal clear to me just by reading the Bible, which you already know, because you've hugged my neck, I've hugged yours, you're shaking my hand, you've seen my manner of lifestyle, you know how I live, you listen to me all the time, you know the spirit that I'm operating in. And brother, I do appreciate it very, very much, what you have shared with us tonight. And also, we're looking forward to the next time that I am on this particular broadcast, hearing your voice again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pastor Dowell. I love you. And just like I said, it's an honor. And to anybody listening, man, praise the Most High Yah, and one body, one love, and all for the betterment of Israel.
Hallelujah. Bless you, Brother Brian.
You bet. Shalom, Pastor Dowell. I'm going to hop off and listen in, and enjoy the evening, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yeah. It's all Ari, man. Yes, it is. It's all Ari, man. Hallelujah. Now, what I would like to say is this. Brother Brian just got finished giving us a smorgasbord. Literally, a smorgasbord of information. And what I want to continue forward and go forward in this is saying this. If you're not able to digest what he just got finished saying, then how are you able to digest the scripture? How are you able to digest the law of the Most High Yah, the Torah? How are you able to come to the knowledge of the truth that you need to be filled with his Ruach HaKodesh? The Bible says that people can't hear without a preacher, and he cannot preach except that he be sent. I realize that we are in a world that people are controlled by the Hasatan, Satan. That he has control of their minds, he has control of their thoughts. That any time that truth comes, the first thing he does is he pulls the string of their mind, and off and running they go. They end up resisting truth. They end up hating the truth. They end up dissenting from the truth. And the sad part about it is that they end up spurning the truth, the only thing that can set you free. And they become lovers of pleasure more than lovers of Yah, which is a very, very sad thing. It really, really, truly is. I hope that some way, somehow, that Brother Brown was able to put a defibrillator on your mind and to stimulate thought, to hopefully help wake you up, because you have to understand, many of you are continually keep waking up, or the Most High is dealing with you, and you're embracing this, and you're starting to make moves, and your natural family don't understand because they love darkness. They love their ignorance. They love their tyranny. They love the shadow of variance. They love all that's going on. And they will not do their own due diligence because their system that they have embraced will cause them to become proactive. Hey, I mean, it just is what it is. The guest calling number is 310-982-4226. We'll get a new sign made just for Blog Talk Radio itself.